Welcome back to the Dragon Table. I'm going to be doing a review of the game Pericle, Gathering Darkness. I don't think there's a ton of reviews out there that have a lot of information. I figured I could share my thoughts with you because I have put a lot of hours into the game. So it's going to be a long video. So I figured I'll do a TLDR. So if you don't want to watch all of it, or if you want to skip around, you can. Despite often feeling like a prototype and sometimes having to house rule unclear situations, I really enjoyed character building, combat, and the simple storyline. I give it an 8 out of 10. So, with that being said, let's actually delve into some specifics of the game. So, my experience with the game is I have played solo 4-character campaign all the way through. I have played a 4-character solo campaign most of the way through, and I am currently playing a 3-character campaign with my 8-year-old daughter, and we are probably 3/4 of the way through. She's controlling 1 character, I'm controlling 2, and I've played a variety of different character builds, so I would say that I have a pretty good amount of experience with the game. I am not an expert. This is not a tutorial. I will never do a tutorial for this game. There's too many unclear rules and there are too many rules. So I got the base game retail. I did not do Kickstarter. I purchased it as a complete game. I did get some add-ons with it, so I'm going to talk about those and whether or not I think they're useful. One of the things that I got were the add-on spell and discipline cards. These don't come in the base game. They should. So next to your character information, to have these cards next to your character is extremely helpful. Sometimes just to remind you that you have a certain ability, and some of the abilities you actually may need to look up fairly frequently, enough so that you don't want to have to keep referring back to the hero handbook and having to look and find the details of that particular discipline or spell. The other thing that I got as an add-on was the health trackers. There are a couple different things that come with that. There are 4 of these, which are you would use to track hit points and exhaustion, and it comes with a bag of plastic red cubes and no explanation on exactly how to use them, so you can use them however you want. The way I like to do it is keep it empty, and then when I take damage or exhaustion, I put it in. It also comes with a couple of different size, and these have, you can't really see maybe necessarily, but they have like an indentation, so they'll hold your cubes. Again, there's not an explanation on exactly how to use them, so you just use them how they'll work for you. Are they necessary? No. I mean, if you want to do, pencil and paper to keep track of hit points and exhaustion, you can do that. You're just going to be erasing and rewriting a whole bunch. So I'd rather track it with cubes. I also got a set of the runic dice. Don't need those. They're just harder to read. I don't know how clear that is, but the numbers are a little hard to read and the symbols because of all of the extra decorations. And that's all it is. It's just extra decorations on the dice. I do think, maybe it would be helpful to have a second set of just regular dice if you're playing with other people. I also got the logbook. It's just this little flippity-flappity book with a place where you could take notes, room for a couple of different, parties. Just use a notebook. This is completely unnecessary. And of course you could be taking notes on your character sheets anyways. The other thing I got were the extra hero standees. It's 75 additional hero standees. The base game comes with 74 standees. Most of those are enemies. So There are not a lot of hero standees to choose from, and if you're not particular about what your character looks like, not a big deal. Don't worry about it. I feel like it's an important part of playing a game like this where it's a role-playing game. You've got a character that you're developing. Purchasing those additional hero standees gave me a lot more choices to make my characters look like what I want them to look like. And those are the only add-ons I got. So, what are the components like for this game? Well, the first thing that I have an issue with is that there's no list of components. I think with any game, whether it's a simple game or a more complex game, there should be a list of what comes in the game. You know, how the number of, if there's cards, the number of cards, if there's standees, the number of standees, if there's a rule book, all that kind of stuff. I think that should come standard. One of the things is maps. And there are a ton of maps, which is good. And they're high quality. Random map, hopefully not giving anything away. And most of them are double-sided. And they'll have a number up in the corner that when you're setting up a particular battle, it'll tell you, or combat, whatever the situation is, it'll tell you which map to put out. And you just have to dig through the pile and find out. They are very, very sturdy. That's what makes the box so heavy. And they are hex based. They're not squares, they're hexes. The standees. I like the standees. They're, not as much character as a mini, but the game would have been terribly expensive if it was full of like miniatures. And usually if they're miniatures, they're not painted. You have to paint them yourself, and I don't have time to do that. So I'll show you like one of the heroes. Okay, so this is one of the hero standees. I think the artwork's pretty good. It's a little small sometimes for us old people to see exactly what it looks like, but it's pretty good. And then I'll give you a monster or an enemy example. And these come in different sizes. There are most of the monsters are single hex size. Some of them are bigger and are multiple hex sizes. I think the artwork is really well done. They are high quality acrylic. All right, the dice. So this game, if you don't know yet, like I say, not a tutorial, I'm not going into how specifically the game plays, but you do have to understand that the dice system is different than the majority of RPG games. You're not rolling a 20-sided die trying to roll high. The main die that you're using in this game is called an action die. It's 10-sided. There's 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then a failure. And on the other side, flip it over, this is, if you can see, 4 successes. These little circles are successes, and that one right there is a crit. So this is the action die, referred to through all of the rules and most of the game when you're playing is AD. And instead of trying to roll high, you're actually trying to roll under a number. So if you're doing a check to see if you hit, or doing a check for a skill, if you're rolling, say, an AD2, you're going to be trying to roll 2 or less, or one of these successes. I do like the idea that even if you have a low chance, you still always have a chance for a success, because there are success markers on 50% of the die. So you always are going to have a 50% chance of success on a roll. And I do like that. So dice are good quality. It comes with 2 action die, 1 red, 1 black. It comes with 3 black, just regular 6-sided dice with, instead of pips, they have numbers. Comes with a crit die. It has different sides that mean different things. 2 defense dice that are yellow. and it comes with 3 D4s, and these are cool. All right, these D4s are, hopefully you can see, they are rounded instead of the typical pointy, like cantrip style D4s, which means they roll really well. I'm a big fan of this style of die. And there's 2 black ones, 1 red one. So character sheets. Now, from what I understand, different printings of the game have different character sheets in them, I think. And I think I have one of the original ones. So my game came with this double-sided character sheet. It's kind of too much, but one side wouldn't be enough. But this is awkward to play with. This, because you do need to refer to the information on both sides frequently. So it's constantly flipping back and forth. Don't like it. I played the first campaign that I played through fully. I used these just as is, front and back. Awkward, flipping back and forth, and they don't erase well. I actually had to use one of my art erasers in order to be able to erase the pencil better and not have it be all shimmery. And what I ended up doing after playing that campaign for a while with 4 characters, you know, trying to save space and it being so that I can reach all of them, is I put these off to the side. So I have my table set up. It's about, you can do it on like half of a decent sized dining table. You could easily set it all up. And then I have a TV tray off to the side for referencing other things. So I would have these off to the side in case I needed to reference something specific. And in front of me, like right in front of each of the characters, I had a large index card with the most important things that I need that I would reference on a regular basis. So I'm not having to constantly refer to this for all of that. This would just be for referencing specific things. The other option is I made copies of the front and back so that we could have 2 sheets. So instead of doing this back and forth, it's this, which is a lot easier. There is a sheet on the Pericle website somewhere that you can print out that's a single sheet, so there's nothing on the back. It's just this. The original character sheet is like almost too much. This is kind of not enough. Like one of the parts of this sheet is items and treasure, and that's the only space you have for it. And for instance, on this character sheet, this is items and treasure for this character. So if you use a single sheet, you might find that it's not enough. You'd end up having to write on the back anyways or add another piece of paper. So I printed this out because I was trying to figure out what was going to work best. The rule book. The rule book. Okay. There are 2 books that come with the game. There is the rule book and the hero handbook. It's a nice thick quality like cover, and the pages are nice and shiny. It just by looking at it, I'm looking at this on the back, feels very prototypey. Feels a little unfinished. And the graphic design inside and the layout system, not great. Some of the way it's organized seems a bit haphazard, almost like it's laid out for someone who already knows the rules, which is not how a rule book should be. The different headers, why they're different colors in different places, doesn't really make sense. There's not enough, there aren't enough graphics, and sometimes the images or graphics that are included, there's no reason for them. And I don't think that in a rule book you should have any kind of superfluous graphics or images. They should all be related to something. They should have a caption that either explains what it is that's being shown or refers to what it is in the text. And it's quite dense text. Most of this is about combat. The vast majority of the rulebook is about combat. And there are a few things that weren't included. So like here, these facing directions I had to write in. And they're still a little unclear. It's very, very all over the place. Even I have read it front to back multiple times. And I still, sometimes if I want to look something up, I don't know where I'm going to find it. There's a table of contents, not specific enough, needs an index. Especially since it's basically kind of a new rule system with its own terminology. If that's the case, you need to have an index so that if some terminology comes up, you can look it up quickly. It's, and then you can see it's shown on page 8, 20, and 22 or something. I think that should be necessary. To be clear, I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts in digital design. And as part of that, I did have to learn, obviously, basic graphic design. And I also worked as a graphic designer, with print materials. So I'm not just speaking as a board gamer, I'm also speaking as someone who has graphic design experience. And this is, it's not good. It's not a good rule book. I definitely think, if you're playing it alone, or if you're playing with a group, someone needs to read it front and back multiple times so that you really know whatever rules happen to be in here, and maybe then you have an idea of where to find answers. Half the time I just open it up halfway through and then I just start flipping back and forth to try and find what I'm looking for. And it doesn't, there's a lot of stuff that it's not covered in here. If you need very specific rule sets, you're either this isn't the game for you, or you're going to need to be communicating with the people who made the game, or you have to wait for the updated rulebook that's supposed to be much better. That's not coming out until May, because it's tied with the Kickstarter for Labyrinth. Too bad, so sad. For whatever reason, the Hero Handbook is much better. I don't know why. It's the same, quality of paper and stock. Again, just a table of contents, no index. But for whatever reason, just the layout makes more sense. It's more clear. It just is a much, much better reference than the rulebook. I'm perfectly happy with this as the Hero Handbook. The only thing I would add to it is some more background about the world and the ancestry. It's not referred to as races, it's referred to as ancestry. There's just a little paragraph about each ancestry, of which there are 5. There's Everken, human, forest elf, Odrim, and stone dwarf. And there's, with that few, you should, I think, get a little bit more background information. The game also comes with player aids. I think it comes with 5 player aids, which is a little odd because the maximum number of characters you can play is 4, but whatever. Again, nice quality. It's going to hold up over time. I think there's a little too much on it. You do need to refer to this, I don't know, fairly frequently, especially when you're first playing the game and during your first campaign. So if you're only planning on playing it once through, you will be referring to this pretty frequently, but I think you could probably have it be half the size, because some of the things that are on here are not things that you refer to frequently enough that you couldn't just pull out the rule book and, find the answer there. There's certain things that do need to be on here that are referenced frequently. Game comes with these black plastic cubes that they will, reference for you to use in different situations. Often they reference that you need to use 11 of them. My game came with 10. So I don't know if that was a mistake or not, because there's no list of components. So I don't know. So if I need 11 of these, I just pull it from some other game. I've got a million other parts laying around, which also comes in useful in some other situations. There are envelopes that come with the game that are part of like revealing storyline. Again, it's pretty simple storyline. Not a ton of different ways you can go, but there are only 5 envelopes that come with the game. And in a game like this, it's kind of fun to have a secret envelope that you open, and it reveals information that's unique, and then you can refer to it if it's part of the storyline. My daughter really enjoyed opening these, but like I say, they're only 5, so you don't get a lot of information. I think the game would have benefited from maybe more of these, just for immersion in the story. There's a reference in the rulebook, as well as I believe also in the Hero Handbook, about the magical item compendium. And it says that it's available on their website because it was part of the original Kickstarter. It is not available on the website. It will not be available until May of next year, which will be May of 2025. And it has a list of the different magical items in the game. And the idea is that if you're shopping at a specific type of vendor, that you could purchase some of these magical items. Even though the rulebook says you can get it, you cannot. And there's no PDF or anything online that you could look up to see what's in it. Okay, so that's the components. Let's talk about the app. All right, it's not actually an app. It is a embedded program on their website. You create an account, and you can then create a party that's either going to be 3 or 4 characters. You choose, and then you enter the names, and you enter certain different data points that you would need for the app, which is referred to as Loremaster, to basically decide where in the combat order you're going to go during an encounter. I think the interface is fine, easy to read, good choice of font, good size, even for the olds like me. I'm fine with the app. I'm fine with the artwork that comes with it. There are some issues. I use an iPad to play it. However, I strongly suspect that this app runs much better on a laptop than it does on an iPad. For one thing, there are issues with playing the videos. There are pretty often there are videos that pop up, and they're not like, it's more like artwork that will sometimes have some moving components, and it has narration. There are problems with it loading. That's the big thing I run into, is either it'll take a long time to start, or once it gets started, it'll stop in the middle and then have to start up again. It'll give you the option to switch between 2 different types of video players. It doesn't matter. Neither one of them work well. Either one doesn't work at all, or the other one is the one that will hesitate and start and stop. And I believe that is an issue between the app and an iPad versus on a computer. The nice thing is that you do have the option of just reading the video text, so you can just skip the video and read the video narration and get the information that way instead of listening to it. Maybe breaks the immersion a bit, but most of the information that you're getting in the game, you're reading anyways, so it's not like a deal breaker. I do wish that they worked better, but not a deal breaker for me personally. Sometimes I have issues in the combat setup. If there's a lot of text in the setup information, sometimes on my iPad in my browser, because it's, again, not an app, it's in a browser, it'll get stuck scrolling up and I won't be able to reach the button that will take you to the next step. Finally, eventually, I will be able to press that button, but that's something that probably shouldn't happen. All right, so for the content on the app, this game has a lot of misspellings, some random punctuation errors. Sometimes they're missing words in a sentence. There are also issues with like enemies being mislabeled. But it does feel very much like it was not properly proofread before release. And I know some people will say, well, then I should be reporting those bugs or those mistakes so they can be fixed. Look, I bought this retail. I paid a lot of money for this game. I am not a playtester. I should not be having to report bugs and mistakes in the game. Again, if you're willing to look past that, which I am because I enjoy the gameplay enough, you're good. If you can't look past that kind of stuff, then again, not the game for you. It's going to make you frustrated. This one's a little bit more frustrating. Sometimes you do not have enough standees for multiple enemies that look the same. For instance, something like zombies. And there are other ones that happens to. And then the game sometimes will tell you, just pick something to represent a multiple of that. If the developers know that in the storyline, in the combat, you're going to have a certain type of enemy, provide the standees for those enemies. There's no way provided to mark enemies. In the app, each enemy will be given basically a card that will show their image and their stats. There's their health points with a place for you to remove or add health points. And then most of the conditions that you would need to apply to them, where you would choose, like this person is prone or whatever. But occasionally there are instances where something has happened to this enemy that you can't mark on the thing. So you have to come up with a different way to mark it. Also, if you have multiple enemies that are the same name, just a different number, there's no way to mark that either. I tried once using like a dry erase marker to write on the base, but it doesn't work very well because you'd almost have to stand up to look, and if you have the wrong color on the wrong background of the map, you're not going to be able to see it anyways. So I started trying to use the little plastic cubes that come with it. These slide off. That doesn't work. So what I found that works the best is wherever these cubes came from, but they're wood cubes. You can put them on your enemy hex and they stay pretty well. Obviously, if you tip it, they're going to fall off, but you can easily slide it around. Kind of easily. Slide it around, pick it up, and they're going to stay on better. And that's how I mark, enemy 1, enemy 2, enemy 3. It's also how I would mark different conditions that you can't mark in the app setup. One of the selling points of the game is that it's an RPG that is easy to set up, break down, and so forth. And I agree. I think that the setup for this game, particularly once you're a little bit more familiar with it, even the first time, honestly, is quicker than the setup for a lot of the more complex, just average board game. It does not take that long to set up and get started and go. The longest part of it, when you first play, is going to be creating your character, which is what should be the longest part. So, good job on that. The game does come with, I think, 5 or 6 prefab characters that have a starting character sheet with then your the character sheet that they would upgrade to, and it tells you when you would jump up to the next one if you're playing a prefab character. It's also easy, I think, to switch between campaigns. I leave this game set up because I happen to have room to do it. All I have to do in order to switch is, basically have some kind of storage and like memory system for each of my characters from the campaign that I'm stopping. So for instance, this is a character from a game I paused. So I have her in a little bucket. I have her standee. I have cubes to signify some special ability or something that she has. If she had taken damage that I need to remember, I'd put that in there either by cubes or with a note. Same thing with exhaustion. As long as I'm not using her cards with another campaign, I'll put the cards with that, and I put the character sheets in the box. I do that. I load the new campaign. Off we go. It's easy. Mostly. It's a little annoying because unless I'm missing something, you have to log out of the app and log back in to pull up a different campaign or start a new campaign. Yeah. It's going to take you an extra minute to do. So I'm not worried about that. So, character creation. There are no classes. So that was a really hard thing for me to get over the first time I made a campaign, because I have this thing in my head where I'm like, okay, I need like a kind of a tank type character, and I need kind of a, like a caster, and and that's just not how this game works. It's much more about how your characters balance each other out. For melee type characters, in order to kind of choose what path you're going to go on, the first thing you're going to choose is what type of weapon they're going to have. Each weapon type has a different special ability. During character creation, you're going to be given a certain number of experience points based on your knowledge and maybe a special ability of your ancestry. And then you choose your starting stats, and then you choose disciplines, spells, and skills. For ranged characters, you're pretty much looking at archers with a bow. There is an option for crossbow. There are hardly any damage spells. So if you want to be like a glass cannon, there's really kind of only one way to go with that. The first campaign that I played, I had a caster that could do damage, but it took me a little while to figure out how to play that character to the best of its ability, and I had to team up with another character to make it more effective, and that is interesting. I like that a lot. When you play the game, you can choose whether you play Saga mode or Adventure mode. Adventure mode is where there's no plot armor, so your characters can die, and then you have to reroll. Because if you play Saga mode, your characters can't die. They can be knocked unconscious during a battle or combat, but they will come back to life. They're not dead. They're not out of the game. The only issue with that is that the app really is set up for your characters to die. You kind of have to finagle with it a little bit to play it in Saga mode. Not most of the time, just a few instances that the app was not told that there is a Saga mode. So you have to kind of figure it out on your own how you're going to handle the fact that your characters are going to live despite the heavy stakes that they were involved in. So the storyline. And obviously, not going to give any spoilers, but it's a fairly basic fantasy trope kind of storyline, which, again, personally, for me, I'm fine with that. The way this particular game varies from that is not as much in the storyline as it is in the type or the way the characters work, because there are no classes. These characters play a lot differently. And I think that's what brings a little bit more variety to the game and makes that base storyline you don't notice so much that it's kind of the same kind of things that you see in other games and books and things that we've been consuming for many, many, many decades. Although you do get to make choices in the game, there are not that many, what I would refer to as like side quests, where you can go off, experience some different parts of the story, gain some more experience points, and just explore the world a little bit. There's quite a bit of railroading, and it kind of has to, because of the nature of the app. It's not a person. I would like it if there was a little bit more of a little more side quests, a little more time that I can spend off doing other things in the game than just progressing the main quest once you get past a certain point. So, overall gameplay. I have found that I do have to house rule. Not all the time, but fairly often. Just because there's things that are not clear due to the rulebook or the way the Loremaster app is presenting something. I don't mind that too much because I'm just enjoying the game. In combat, there are times that you have to make decisions for the enemy because there is no DM. It's just a computer program following its directives on what it thinks the enemy is supposed to be doing. Whether that refers to movement or an action. And if you have to make a choice because the Loremaster isn't clear about what the enemy is supposed to be doing, I try as much as I can, outside of following the Loremaster and the rulebook, to make a decision that would be most logical for the enemy. And I also base that on the intelligence of the enemy in question. If it's kind of not a super smart enemy, maybe they're not going to make the best choice, and I take that into account. If it is like a super smart caster type person with a lot of knowledge, they're probably going to make some smart decisions. So sometimes you have to do that, and it's basically what a DM would do for you. So you just kind of have to do it yourself. So sometimes you do have to pick up a little bit of the role of a DM, but it's not in such a way that it breaks the game. One of the things that comes into play in combat is facing. That's why the hex system is very important. So I'm just going to hold up a plain base. So this plain base that I have not taken the plastic off of, so it's easier, plastic coating, so it's easier for you to see. So you put your character or enemy here, and you're going to have 3 front hexes, 1, 2, 3. You're going to have 2 side hexes back here, and then you're going to have 1 rear hex. If there's an enemy in the front hex, usually that means that now her movement is restricted, and so is the enemy. It's called being embattled, and it has a big impact on movement. If you're at a side hex or a rear hex, in general, you are not going to be embattled, but the enemy would be. And then at the end of, once everybody's moved, there's a lot of rules about movement. At the end of movement, you have to rotate, and the heroes will rotate first. So everybody's moved, and then the heroes have a choice to rotate based on where they think would be most beneficial within their the hex space that they're in. And then the enemies rotate based on, there's a list, that one of the things that I had to write into the rulebook. You follow that list and you rotate the enemy, or you make a decision for them. That's logical. One of the things that's in the game is grappling. I hate grappling so much. I understand it. I understand why it's in the game. Sometimes it's not too horrible, but it's basically, you're getting tackled by an enemy. You'll be able to roll a die to see if you can not have that happen. But if the enemy tackles you or you tackle the enemy, you move into the same hex, both you go prone, and then you can only use your grapple weapon to fight in that position. One of the things that's going to come up in combat is cover. And that is you know, one combatant is attacking another combatant at range, is there something in between the two that is going to provide cover? It can be an object, it could be another combatant. It is described pretty well in the rulebook, but basically if you're shooting at something that has cover, then they get a defense die, which is this thing. And if they roll certain things, they have a chance to either completely block the damage or make it less likely for your damage to go through. It's just sometimes it's a little tricky to be like, to tell if it's actually cover or not. It's like there's like maybe just this, it's like a teeny tiny little bit, and you're like, is that cover? I don't know. And then if it's an ally that's cover, you have it. If you miss, you have a chance of hitting them. So read that part of the book so that you're clear on it. One of the things you can do as an action for like that happens for your entire action is you can choose to defend. And that means that you get a defense die for that entire turn, but you cannot take an action like other than that. You can't attack or heal or anything. You just get a chance to defend. So this is good if you're in a situation where you think you might take a bunch of damage, and there's no other way for you to get out of it. You could kind of see if you can block it with a defense die. And the enemies can do it too. The enemies can defend as well. So managing, keeping track of your hit points and your exhaustion is very much going to be a personal preference thing. You can do it on your character sheet by erasing, writing, erasing, writing. If that's what you're used to doing, you can do that. I prefer to use the cubes to track it. The confusing part is that if you're a character that's taking exhaustion, which usually is going to be a caster type, if your exhaustion and damage ever equal your total max hit points, you are knocked unconscious. So you have to be very careful keeping track of your hit points and your exhaustion so that you don't kill yourself by casting. So you might have to play around with it a little bit to figure out the best way for you to manage that so that you keep track of it. One of, like I said earlier, 10-sided die for attacking to see if your attack's successful, or your skill checks, whatever. But we're going to talk about combat right now. One of these is a crit. If you roll this, this is a crit. If you crit, you roll the crit die. What's on the crit die? Well, there's 2 chances for just double damage. There's 1 chance for just your special ability to take place, like your crit effect for your weapon. There's a chance for you to choose either your crit effect or double damage, and there's one where you can do double damage and do your crit effect. Then there's this stupid side, which is regular damage and nothing else. If you crit, something should happen. So, just be aware, one of these, nothing happens. And if you're okay with having a crit that doesn't do anything, then that's fine. Otherwise, house rule it the way you best see fit. All right, there's 2 ways to recover. There's rest and recovery. Rest happens after most combats. Some combats it doesn't. Most combats it does. It'll tell you that you get XP, and it will give you a chance to, you can recover 1 exhaustion during a rest, and then you get a chance to heal by using healing potions. That can happen during that time, but you do not automatically get health points back or any more than 1 exhaustion during a rest. Recovery is what would happen if you're in a safe place like an inn, where everything comes back. Your health comes back, your exhaustion is gone, and any special things you have that can be used once a day are reset. The problem is until you get to a certain point in the game, which is pretty far in, it is unpredictable when you will be able to have a recovery. The game decides for you based on what is happening in the storyline. It'll tell you if you go back to the certain place to recover. It's not until you're farther along that you can choose to go to, say, an inn and recover. Not a huge fan of that. I would like if you could have the option to choose when you recover. Obviously, you can't. Obviously, you need to be out of. You need to be in, a town in order to do that. That sometimes it can be a little tricky. If you take a lot of damage or exhaustion during a battle, you might not be able to get it back right away. One of the things that's not addressed in the rulebook, one of the many things that's not addressed in the rulebook, is when can you spend the XP that you've earned. It doesn't say. If you're going to be probably nitpicky about it, you probably would say recovery. When you're at a safe place, like an inn or whatever, that's when you can, spend your experience points. It's just a little trickier because not only are there no classes, there are no levels. So it's not like, okay, you've done such and such, you hit this level, so now you can get, choose whatever abilities or, spells, disciplines, whatever you want, based on your level. It's, if you have enough XP to get a certain discipline, you can get it. You don't have to wait for it. If you want to be a little bit looser about it, in that case, I say during rest, you can use your XP. And you can say, well, in this past period of time, I've been working on learning such and such, and so I can have this ability or skill now. Okay, so bottom line. Is it worth it? Is it fun? So I think I'm coming from a perspective where I can give a pretty fair assessment because I have played a lot of hours in several different ways. I've played a total of 10 different characters that all have different abilities. I really like this game. Despite all of the things that I might have said about it that are negative, I've had so much fun. I don't get to play D&D. This is it. This is my D&D. For years, I have looked for a solo game that could come somewhat close to having character development, story, combat, that kind of stuff. I've tried a bunch of them. I've had fun, but this is the one that hits the spot for me. I wish that there was more side questing. I also wish that the next content they were releasing was a continuation of the campaign instead of a completely different set of content, which is Labyrinth. The game's expensive. If you're only going to play the campaign once, maybe it's not worth that amount for you. I thought I was only going to play the campaign once, and I just took a risk on it. But now I'm in my third campaign, and I'm already thinking about my fourth, and thinking about how can I make some weird character, like pick some very strange disciplines and spells to make up just kind of some just quirky, weird characters, make it, a little less standard, make it kind of funky. Yeah. When you realize that you're driving down the road and you're thinking about some character you're going to make for the next time you play a game, it's probably a good game for you. It's not for everybody, I don't think. Like I say, I think if you're a real stickler for rules and you want everything spelled out really clearly and you don't want to be house ruling things, probably not the game for you. And I have definitely gotten my money's worth out of it. There are a bunch of things that I have brought up as negatives or potential negatives, but the enjoyment that I have gotten from the game has obviously outweighed those. 8 out of 10 for me. Close to a 9 out of 10, except for those little things that I had mentioned. Hopefully, this gives you an idea if Pericle Gathering Darkness is the right kind of game for you, because it is an investment. So I don't want you to waste your money if it's not right. Thank you for visiting the Dragon Table. I'll see you next time.